You're listening to the _Transformation podcast, your practical guide to business transformation.
Welcome to the _Transformation podcast. This is episode 9. My name's Joe Ailes.
My name's Jason West.
And together we're the founders of _. So last week we talked about the importance of having defined project, program and portfolio methodologies to control transformation. So this week we're unpacking the program management capabilities that are needed within your team to deliver successful transformation programs. So Jason, what are the program management capabilities that's needed within a team?
Well, I think the first thing to say is there is a difference between project and program management capabilities, and it's important to make that distinction. And I think it's easier to talk about project management first. It's kind of more straightforward. What they're there to do is kind of a bit easier to understand. And, the purpose of a project manager is to ensure that a defined set of outputs, whether they're products or their services, or it's a new system or whatever that thing is, but it's really defined. They're there to make sure that gets delivered on time to the agreed specification and on budget. And what that requires is somebody that can really drive a schedule. They're great at planning. They can anticipate problems. They can manage risks. They problem solve on their way to delivering those really defined outputs. And you need somebody that's really well organized and has a real drive and a passion about them. These aren't passive roles. They're people that are very delivery focused. They're very outcome focused. They need to have a good degree of interpersonal skills because a lot of the time your team isn't, they don't have a direct reporting line to you. You don't necessarily have full-time resources dedicated to your project. So they need to be able to, sort of engage people and inspire them to give, that discretionary effort required. But their role is quite tightly bounded. There's often a misunderstanding and misconception around these terms project manager and program manager. And it's important to understand which role you're talking about in the overall kind of hierarchy of the change that you're trying to deliver. Project managers tend to be quite technical, if we can call it technical. They'll probably be kind of Prince 2 trained or equivalent project management. But it's definitely somebody that knows their way around MS Project, or they know what a Gantt chart is, and they're very much managing things to time, to budget, to specification. The kind of the key difference with a program manager is a program manager is really concerned about delivering the business outcome, the benefits that are required within the business case. So, a project manager might put up a building. The program manager is there to ensure that that building is going to be habitable. That people are kind of keen to live or work in that building. That they're managing the anxiety of the residents of that building about, well, we're going to move you from your old place to your new place. Yes. And they're actually got that really on their radar.
Yes, it brings into sort of into account the whole change and the impact of what you're doing on people, and has a much broader perspective, I guess, than a project manager that's focusing particularly on that specific outcome.
Yes, yeah. Stakeholder management becomes a much bigger issue. You've got competing priorities, and a program is going to be made up of numerous projects. So a program manager will typically have a number of project managers reporting into them. For some of the smaller transformations, they may not be full-time dedicated project managers. They might be functional leads or subject matter experts within a finance, HR, or procurement function, and that can be a real challenge in that you're as a program manager, you're having to control the quite complex change without necessarily having people with the requisite skills and experience, or just understanding of the sort of updates that you need to provide into a program from a project level.
But just taking a little step sort of back actually on the difference between sort of program management and project management, because occasionally we see individuals in organizations labeled as project managers, but in fact actually they're performing the role of a program manager. So it's really important that sponsors understand the difference between the two, and ultimately what is it that you're trying to achieve. And if your program's trying to do something that's so significant and impactful across the organization, you really need to think carefully about, do you need a program manager that is going to absolutely worry about all of those things that you talked about, versus a project manager that will be there specifically to deliver that task against that outcome. And organizations get a bit hung up at times about, we can't have program managers because we only employ project managers. Call them what you wish to call them, but ultimately you need to understand that you're required to bring in an individual that has a different level of capability to that of a project manager. So we've seen that a few times across some organizations. Yeah. And organizations sort of getting a little bit sort of confused and frankly hung up about the job titles and ultimately make the wrong recruitment decisions.
So the same is true in the opposite direction. So where you get project managers put into program management roles. Yes. And that can be far more problematic. So there's far more uncertainty at the program level. You can't specify everything to the nth degree and control it all in a single schedule and a single set of plans and deliverables. The role of the program manager, or the capability that a program manager needs, is far more creative problem solving. It's often far more experience of dealing with emergent risks that are complex, that need to be kind of tackled from a number of different angles. The kind of the stakeholder management, the change management, and really kind of getting to grips with ensuring that whatever you're building is going to be desired even by the people that need to adopt this new way of working, or whether that's systems, processes, or whatever. It does actually require quite a lot of emotional intelligence and the ability to engage and influence people at all levels of the organisation. But we've definitely seen some challenges around programs that have been treated like just really big projects, and that brings with it a set of behaviours that tend to be around just driving for dates, driving down cost, and losing sight of the big picture. And it's especially true in functional transformation, and with the move to new cloud technology, the whole drive for digital transformation. We've seen quite a lot of program managers that have come up through the IT project management delivery route, and they've kind of got the badge as a finance program manager or an HR program manager because they've delivered a technology product.
The reality is they don't have a lot of functional knowledge. They don't have the depth of expertise in the function in which they're trying to execute the change in. So it does become a little bit problematic.
Yes, especially if you combine that with a set of behaviours that's all about driving to a particular deadline and budget. they can force through a set of design decisions that are actually really detrimental to the business and the ultimate outcome, whether it will be adopted, whether it will deliver the benefits. And we've talked about that whole piece around kind of taking scope out to hit a deadline.
Yeah.
It tends to be driven from a very kind of project management time deadline approach. So, it's something to really watch out for. So from a functional transformation perspective, I think it is important that the person that you've got leading that transformation really understands the function that you're transforming. So if you're delivering a finance transformation, it's really important the program manager has kind of functional experience in finance, and they understand the operational impact on some of the decisions that they're potentially forcing process owners to kind of push through.
What sort of capabilities do you think, or competencies, do you think a program manager has that a typical project manager wouldn't necessarily have? I mean, in terms of actually from a qualificational perspective, do they have the same qualifications as a project manager?
I think there are definitely qualifications out there that are very specific to program management. Yeah. So managing successful programs and the Axlos world being one of them. But it's more, I think, around mindset and approach and the level of complexity that somebody's dealing with. So there's far more kind of big picture thinking, creative innovation, problem solving that's required from a program management perspective, whereas project management is really more in the space of delivering to a really predefined set of parameters, and the challenge comes where if you put a program manager into very much a project management role, you've kind of over-dimensioned that role, and sometimes they're not effective. Because they're perhaps worried too much about the big picture, too worried about stakeholder management and change and things like that. And actually, you just need the building built. Yes, they can become destructive in where you just need stuff done on time and budget and all the rest of it. But vice versa, if you put a project manager into a program management role and they just drive rather than really kind of thinking through the bigger picture and being able to see how the linkages are made across different projects and different competing priorities.
You're listening to the Transformation podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the transformation capability specialists. To find out more, visit _group.com.
So the other thing that program managers really have to deal with is the inherent level of uncertainty that you have on a transformation. You can't possibly know all of the things that you need to address at the beginning. So being able to understand the strategic direction, the vision, and where you're heading, and then being comfortable with the fact that things will happen and change, and you need to adapt and solve problems along the way. So it requires quite a lot of mental toughness.
Yes.
This stuff isn't easy.
Dealing with ambiguity is not easy.
And you're dealing with people that don't want to change. Any change is, generally viewed as a risk or a threat, even to a lot of people that are working within a function. And there can be some really tough messages that have to get delivered. Maybe we're not competitive in this area. We've got too many people delivering our finance processes. We're costing a lot more in procurement than our competitors. Well, pretty quickly people are going to equate well, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my role? So there's a lot of nuance to this, and people really do need quite a lot of that emotional intelligence to be able to cope with it, but the mental toughness to deal with those difficult decisions. The other area that's really important to focus on here from a project and a program management capability is it's a real risk to just place all of that, your skills and your competence, in external consultants or contractors who are going to come in, deliver a project or a program for you, and then leave.
One of the things that we also witness in some of the clients, with some of the clients we've worked with, is the organisation's decision to appoint internal BAU resources into program management or project management roles. That has some absolute value in it. But what are some of the key watch outs, Jason, for organisations that decide to do that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a toolkit that comes along with being a project or a program manager. There's methodologies, there's reporting templates, there's a mindset that comes with it, and an operational functional person won't necessarily have that. So you're putting people into a position where they don't know what they don't know. And as with anything, if they're good people, they will figure it out as they go along. But, that's quite a high risk strategy if you're a program sponsor and you need stuff delivered and you've actually not given people the tools they need to be effective in those roles. And it's not uncommon for operational people to be seconded onto these programs and then immediately thrown in the deep end. Right, okay, you need to attend these design workshops. Okay, you need to provide a weekly update.
Status report.
Yeah, you need to
what's your schedule?
Together.
What's your plan?
Yeah, what are your risks? What are your risk issues? Without anybody actually explaining, well, what's the difference between a risk and an issue?
Yeah.
Somebody that's never had to put a plan together before, beyond maybe just some basic Excel planning. And if you haven't paired those individuals up with professional project managers or program managers, it can be a real risk to the program. So it's stressful for the individuals. You're putting them in a position where they're not exactly set up to be successful. And on top of that, they're having to make a huge amount of design decisions that are going to affect the future effectiveness and efficiency of your function in the next kind of 5-10 years. And they're making decisions that are impacting their role, the roles of people in their team, their friends, their colleagues, people they've worked with for years. This is a difficult role. So you really do need to kind of give them as much support as you possibly can. We'd always advocate bringing in experienced and qualified project and program managers, but pairing them up with subject matter experts that you second onto the program, and actually going through a level of training and development with the project team that you've seconded in, because frankly, just project and program management skills are just they're just good ways of making change happen in an organization. It's just a structured, sensible, common sense approach to kind of managing things. So these skills aren't wasted. You're going to go through your transformation, and they're going to add value when you're live, you're in production.
But ultimately, everyone that's involved in the project needs to have an element of a project mindset anyway.
Yes.
So bringing expertise in that can enrich the knowledge and capability of those involved in the program is always a good thing. So it's
And the reality is that if you've got the capability in your team to identify a problem, quantify it, analyze it, put a plan together to address it, secure investment from somebody to fix that problem, and then go and deliver it on time, on budget, with a great outcome, and deliver the benefit. That's an enduring capability that any high performing team, I believe, needs over the long term. So really view your transformation program as an opportunity to upskill key members of your team and really build that enduring capability. So you have it is part of your business as usual. So to recap,
yes,
there is a difference between project managers and program managers. Make sure that you're using the right person to do the right role, and there is a difference in skill set and mindset between the two roles, and be clear about what's required in which place.
And the sponsor really needs to understand: is this a program I'm launching, or a project I'm launching, and then make the distinction at the very beginning of your program. Or your initiative to determine what type of character you want leading that activity.
Yes, and the key drivers there is how complex is this? What's the level of change? And how many moving parts to it are there?
Yeah.
Can it all be held in a single plan and managed until delivery, or actually are we making changes to people, process, and technology?
Yeah.
In which case they require separate but joined up management, in which case it's a program manager that you really need. But don't ignore the capability that your team actually needs. So it's great seconding people onto a project or a program, but actually support them, give them some training, some development before they get thrown in the deep end and they have to make a huge amount of decisions about the future of your organization. Join us next week for episode 10, when we're going to be talking about solution design capability. And thanks so much for downloading. Please share with your friends, colleagues, and family if they're that interested in transformation. But we appreciate your time, and thanks again for listening.